Welcome again to Discourse on Human Virtues. And we have already discussed the what is moral agency and what are the conditions of moral agency. When can we call a person a moral agent? The idea is that any person who lacks the four or five characteristics like understanding, rationality, selfhood, intention, and free will is not a moral agent. So, who among the human beings may be considered a moral agent? Rather, who we could say is definitely not a moral agent. In this regard, if you look at all these distinctions, the distinct characteristics of a moral agent, the children and the insane people are definitely not moral agents. Children are not moral agents because they do not have certain of these characteristics. They do not have understanding or capability to understand the objective standards, moral principles on the basis of which they can judge whether their action is morally right or wrong. Similarly, they lack reason. Not all children are always in a position to judge whether their action will lead to certain consequences. They can't see the connection between their act and the consequence. And certainly they lack most of the time intention. Very few younger children, especially below 5, they have intention to do something. Similarly, the insane people cannot be said to be moral agents. Those who are mentally unstable, because certainly they are not in a position again. So as I was saying, insane persons also are not in a position to reason as well as understand what are the moral standards, subjective moral standards or values. So these two types of people, small children and insane, cannot be considered a moral agent. The next question is, when we talk about moral agency, the question is what is moral? Now, another way it is put is, what is dharma and what is the right thing to do? Dharma means what is the thing that what action is the right action for me, for any person. And then there are different positions on this. One way is to start from the Western perspective directly and and discuss their theories. But here in this course, we take up one piece, one chapter from a book called The Difficulty of Being Good, The Subtle Art of Dharma, by Gurcharan Das. In this book, so this discussion takes place in this book, in the chapter 3, on Yudhishthira's, they titled Yudhishthira's Duty. So what is dharma? Now, dharma is understood in many different senses, different connotations, in the sense that sometimes it means duty, sometimes means it's order. So, dharma could be Raj Dharma, Swadharma, Varnashram Dharma. Dharma is also social order, or in Vedas we find the notion of Vrita, which is supposed to be universal order. That is, nature, the events happen according to certain order. Dharma is certainly not religion in this discussion. Dharma is taken here only in terms of duty. So how do we decide what is my duty? That is, what is the right thing to do for me? As a teacher, what is my duty? As a student, what is a duty? As a politician, as a bureaucrat, as a doctor, as a lawyer, as a policeman, what is the duty of an individual? These individuals in these different roles. And when are we really doing a dharma? That is, we are not following the duty. That is, we are not maintaining the order. By not following the duty, we create disorder. So as we are all aware, the Yudhishthira is one of the characters from the epic Mahabharata, compiled by Vedavyasa. In this discussion, in this one of the parvas, after the Vinod, so the background of the story, so we need to understand a little bit. So most of us have read or heard or watched at least on TV some idea about what is the story of the Mahabharata. One thing is very so. Let me just for the sake of the clarity and the background, let me just summarize the story very quickly. So the story starts with the Maharaja Shantanu in our context, who is the son of uh, Bharat, and he has no children. And but when he marries the Ganga, the goddess Ganga, he has a son. When he marries, he has a son, and the son is named Devvrat, and he's old. Sorry, the Shantanu is old, rather, he is aged now in his midlife, sort of, and Devvrat is also an adult. This time he is very aloof, and Shantanu is not taking interest in affairs, the administrative affairs of the king, and he just roams around. And one day he arrives on the banks of the Ganga, and he sees a beautiful woman, and who is smelling really good. And her name is Satyavati, and she's the daughter of the king of all the sailors. So now, cut the long story short, he wants to marry her. And in order to do that, it's not like these days that if you have a king, you can abduct someone. He goes to ask permission from her father. And her father is very happy that he wants to marry, that the king wants to marry her daughter. But he has certain conditions. One condition is that if he marries her, what would happen to his children? He wants that only one condition he would allow this marriage to happen if Shantanu promises that the children um, sired by him through Satyavati will become uh, his heirs of the throne of Hastinapur. He's the king of Hastinapur. And that he cannot do because he loves his son a lot, is Devrat. Now, when Devrata finds out about this thing and he knows that his father is not very happy, he's very sad because of that. On the one hand, he cannot do injustice to his son, Devrata. On the other hand, he cannot forget his sort of love with the lady. So he goes and speaks to the father of Satyavati and tells him that, look, if your only worry is that I should, your grandchildren should take the throne, or should be the heirs to the throne. So I can assure you that uh, I will not. I take a vow that I will not sit on the throne. I will never claim the throne of Hastinapur. Now, but he is very cunning. The father Satyavati says, "Well, all right, you will not claim, and I believe you. I trust you that you will not betray, but or you will not break your vow. But what happens when you marry and your children are born, and they will certainly make a claim." Hearing this, Devrata vows that I will not marry, and this is considered to be a very serious vow, really a hard one. He's called the Bhishma. That not only that he is giving up claim to the throne in order that his father can marry the woman of his dreams, he is taking a vow of celibacy, of chastity. And this is when the seeds of Mahabharata, the great war, are sown. Now the story moves on very fast, and the Satyavati gives birth to Chitrangad and Chitravirya, and due to various reasons they die. Now the throne in Shantanu is gone, and Bhishma will not be king, and he will not marry. So what is the Hastinapur is without a king. So Satyavati, who by virtue of a being blessed by Bharadwaj, who sired a son through her named Vedavyas, a great ascetic, and this happened before she married Shantanu, and everybody knows about it. So he invites Vedavyasa, and now through he sires two children, respectively, through the two queens, Amba and Ambalika. Ambika, I suppose, Amba, Ambika, the two queens. So one gives birth to Dhritarashtra and the other to Pandu. Meanwhile, a third, the their maid also gives birth, and that is Vidur. So when they grow up, the Dhritarashtra is anyway he's blind by birth, and Pandu is also not healthy. But since the blind man cannot be the king, Pandu gets the throne. And on the course of time, Dhritarashtra has 100 sons. Duryodhana, Suyodhana, and Sushasana being the chief eldest. And then here again, Pandu via Kunti and Madri, his queens. And again, a different process. He gets 5 sons: Yudhishthira, Bhim, Arjun, Nakul, and Sadeva. So the first 3 are Kunti's sons, and the last 2 are Madri's, and they are twins. Now the story takes a turn when it comes to decision and when it is to be decided who will be the king now. Now here is the debate that Duryodhana is saying that I should be the king because my father was the eldest son of the eldest Kuru, who was the rightful owner of who had the rightful claim to the throne of Hastinapur. He should be, and therefore he's the eldest son of his father. He should be the queen and the king. But on the other hand, the argument was that Pandu was the king and Yudhishthira is the eldest son. In fact, he's the eldest among all. He's even elder, some just a little in terms of time, a few minutes elder than Duryodhana. So Yudhishthira should be the king. And here the seeds of jealousy germinate, envy, jealousy, and finally they play game of dice, and there Yudhishthira, who is by now by the Dhritarashtra, has given the difficult terrain of Indraprastha, Khanda 1 to rule, where they have created a beautiful city, Indraprastha, which is now called Delhi, area around Delhi. So they are the kings of Indraprastha, and they are now very prosperous, and now Duryodhana envies even more. So with the help of his maternal uncle Shukni, he invites them for a game of dice. And there the condition is that one who you have to, of course, you have to bet and stake. So they stake different things, and ultimately Yudhishthira starts losing, and finally it comes to the point where he stakes his 4 brothers and himself, and then he loses them all and everything. And when he has lost his kingdom, his money, his everything, himself also, they have sort of become slave. They have become slaves of the Duryodhana. And finally, the Yudhishthira and Karna and the Shasan, they say that now you have another thing left, which is the most precious, and that is Draupadi. Now, Yudhishthira again stakes Draupadi, and he loses Draupadi. And Draupadi is insulted and dragged to the great hall where this thing is taking place. But as we know that after this, Dhritarashtra intervenes and they return everything and whatever the Pandavas had lost. Now, next time again, Duryodhana, by convincing his father, who himself really is sort of, he is so blind, and he's not only just blind, he's rationally blind, or because he loves his son so much that he wants him to be king, and sort of in turn, he also wants the Pandavas to somehow cease to be a threat to his son. So finally, they are invited again for a game of dice, and this time the conditions are clear. The losers will go for the 12 years in exile. And not only that, there will be another year additional, the 13th year, and that should where they should live in anonymity. And whosoever loses, if they are found in the 13th year by the victors in this game, they will have to go for another 12 years in exile. And this what happens that Yudhishthira loses the game and he has to go to exile. So he, Draupadi, and all the other four brothers, they are now living in exile in a jungle. Now there the here the dialogues that is described in the book takes place in this chapter. Now Draupadi is asking that why a mighty king like you is not is living in the jungle, who you were accustomed to live in such luxury, you are sleeping on bare floor and where you were used to sit on great, beds and wear expensive clothes. And you are a king, you are a mighty king, you have mighty brothers, but you are not waging war because you know that injustice has been done and they have won the dice game by foul play. This so they allegedly sort of. Why doesn't your anger blaze and why are you so calm? But I cannot bear this sight of you people suffering in the jungle. Now, here the question is that why are you doing what you're doing? What is your duty? Why don't you do something different? Now, here the debate starts, and Draupadi is asking again and again, and the question that what is the point of being good and doing right, what you consider your duty, if you are not getting any benefit out of it? There is no happiness, there's no pleasure in it. There's no reward of following the dharma. So here Yudhishthira answers drop these questions. And let's look at some of the PPTs. So the first answer that Yudhishthira gives is, I act because I must. Now he is saying it's a distinction, that is, he's not doing anything for any rewards. He feels that it is duty and he should do. So there is a distinction between consequentialism versus non-consequentialism. That is, when you are deciding what is the right thing to do, that is whether an action is moral or not, you look at the consequences. So the moral of worth of an action is judged on the basis of its consequences. In other words, ends justify the means. On the other hand, consequentialists say that moral worth of an action does not depend on its consequences. So on the one hand, in consequentialism, ends justify means, but in non-consequentialism, ends do not justify means.